And before I turn it over to planning to talk about our protocols, I just want to take a second right now. I'm going to tell this I've got it, so it will go away. Okay. Oh, I'm still telling it. 1 minute, 1 second. I want to joyfully welcome back Heather Bartlett to the planning department. Those of you who've worked with her in the past know that she was with us and then she left, and she's been working on her graduate degree, and she's back with us again, and we're really super happy to have her back. That's my good news. My sad news, and I regret to announce this, is that this will be the last meeting that we have with Miss Alexis Ching. Alexis has taken a new position with a nonprofit called Lead for America, and she's going to be their Senior Community Partnerships Manager. And what that nonprofit, just to let you know, because I didn't know it, she's going to be working to place young change makers in high impact fellowships with organizations across Hawaii and the nation to address our most critical challenges. So we're happy for her. It's right down her alley. And I told her she was a traitor. Okay, just kidding. Okay, so now, Keiko, I'm going to hand this over to you to go through our COVID protocols.
Sure, and I hope. Sorry, unmuted the wrong one. I was going to say that I'm sorry if this is very confusing, but we're set up here in the conference room, which is why we have the two of us in this very small screen, but it felt so impersonal that Heather and I looked at each other and we were like, we got to turn on our cameras so that our faces are with your faces, so it's like we're in an actual meeting together. So anyway, apologies for the extra screen, but we are using the audio from that so we don't cause so much feedback like I did earlier. Okay, so our regular COVID message. Because of the COVID-19 emergency and state and federal guidance on large meetings or gatherings, and pursuant to the mayor's proclamation regarding COVID-19, Community Development Plan Action Committee meetings will be held online until further notice. Members of the public have the option to watch the CDP Action Committee meetings live on the Planning Department's Zoom channel or join the meeting by Zoom link. And we just want to express appreciation for everyone's patience as we continue to navigate through this. So mahalo. Oh, okay, my turn. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the warm welcomes, and I'm really happy to be back and hoping to be able to extend some optimism moving forward into next year. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to working with you folks again, and yeah. And now on to the boring stuff. Okay, so here's the Zoom protocols. We request that all participants on Zoom observe the following. One person speaks at a time. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand or use the raise hand function and wait for recognition from the chair before speaking. Please note that the Zoom chat function is not readily viewable by the public and may not be reflected in the official meeting minutes. Members of the public may use the chat function, and their input is valued and will be noted by planning staff. However, members of the public are encouraged to sign up to provide testimony or alternatively submit written testimony to ensure their comments can be incorporated into the discussion and minutes. Please silence your cell phones and other devices or distractions. And before I turn it back over to Ruth, would anybody like me to walk you through the raise hand or chat feature? Hearing none.
Okay. So just because this is being recorded, we usually will, I just will look around and see who's here, but I mean, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. So I'm here, Ruth Smith. Let's see, who else? Bill Sanborn. Oh, nope, he's coming. Karen Anderson. Oh, you are here. Oh, yeah, you are here. Never mind. Karen Anderson, I know, is on.
Here.
Good. Thank you. Kevin McLaughlin. Kevin is here. Here he is. He's raising his phone. Okay. Trissy.
Here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Trissy's here. We've got Karen, Trissy. Mark Gordon is absent. Pete Hendricks is signing in. And Julia Alice is absent. Okay. So we're in. And with just those two absent, we're sitting on quorum already, right? Because we've got 5, and then we have a 6th one joining us, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Okay. So just to move ahead, we've not received any requests for additions to the agenda. And so we're going to go ahead and get a couple of announcements from planning. Keiko's going to talk to us about the general plan update. And then if you remember from I think it was the September meeting, but anyway, JoJo came and she spoke to the committee, and then planning was going to have a follow-up meeting with her. So they're going to give a brief report on that, and they will have also sent that to you in writing. So general plan, that's you, Keiko? Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so our chair and the committee requested a GP update, and so this is our message announcement for you folks. The administration has been working to launch and implement the new Electronic Processing and Information Center, better known as EPIC. This is our new permitting system, and now that EPIC is up and running, more time will shift to the priority of reviewing and evaluating the general plan comprehensive review. And that, as we shared last time, will include an updated timeline, additional public input, and an outline of the adoption process. And so we will be updating our website, and of course, we will let our action committees know as soon as this information is available. But we would also encourage members of the public to sign up for our GP mailing list, because we'll be sending information out through that as soon as we have new information and an updated timeline.
Okay, let me just underscore that. So you want us to go on to the general plan and sign up to be on the mailing list, so we'll know as soon as that comes, correct?
Yes, and we can double check for action committee members, because I'm pretty sure we took liberties and signed you folks up anyway.
Good. Thank you.
But we'll double check that and we'll let you folks know.
Okay.
And then just real quickly before Alexis talks about the meeting with JoJo, we also got a notice this morning, and so we wanted to share it as an announcement that Community First, they're doing a Community First healthcare assessment. Councilman Richards, this may have come to your office too, and so they're reaching out to ask for help in distributing their survey across the island. So Community First and its partners are surveying Hawaii Island residents throughout the month of November to better understand what communities need to improve their health. The survey is part of Access to Care, a collaborative that's working to transform healthcare on Hawaii Island. So we can drop some links in the chat, but we will also include this information. There's like a tiny video you can watch, a short video, and then a link to the survey. And so we'll send that out to you folks in a follow-up email as well. So just wanted to slip that in.
Community First is a nonprofit that's doing this?
Yes, Community First, along with partners. I'm sorry, I'm not clear on who all of the partners are, but there is a handful of them. And we'll include that information when we send you follow-up info. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to Alexis, and you're going to talk. Bill, did you have something?
No, I'm just fiddling around trying to figure out how to make this thing work.
Okay, well, I'm not recognizing you for that purpose. You can do that on your own. All right, Alexis, let's share with us, and thank you for the written report on meeting with JoJo, but let's just summarize that so it's on the record.
Right. Okay. Let me just pull it up. So on September 22nd, we had a meeting with Jojo Tanimoto, and she wants to ensure that the South Kohala CDP is more inclusive of the Kawaihae area. And specifically, she did mention Kailapa. So she wants to bring awareness to the various changes and issues in that area. And she's just advocating that when we do a revision of the CDP, that we have active inclusion and updates for that area. So she specifically mentioned an update to the map. She said the Makai area for Kailapa has plans to make a park. They've received a grant to manage that portion of the Ahupua'a. There's a lot of community events in Kawaihae. There's a Kupuna Talk Story, celebration of the Queen, a Kiki fishing tournament that she would like to see promoted in the CDP. And those are sponsored by the Kailapa Association. She did mention Kawaihae Canoe Club being very important. And she mentioned some other issues having to do with flooding for the dry wells, noticeable changes to Kawaihae Harbor. And she is also wondering about plans for coastal management in that area of Kawaihae and the boat harbor. And she had some mentions of the volunteer fire station that's in North Kohala, and water issues and lack of water from the county in certain areas in Kawaihae. So we just wanted to make sure that that got on the record for her and that it's on everybody's minds. And if anybody would like to, talk to her more about these issues or be an advocate for this area, I'm sure she would be most glad.
And just let me, I think we talked about this. I don't think we actually got this put down, but just I'm sure most people are aware that the Kawaihae Harbor is currently under construction in terms of remodeling and and they're doing new paving down there. There's a lot going on, and because that is right in our district, and everybody's had to make their adjustments about it. But of course, and the canoe club is obviously affected by that. But they are moving along, they're making the changes, and I think the completion date it's not going to be that long. I think it will be done by the end of November. So, and I think that when we discuss this, a lot of what we're talking about is as we start to revisit our CDPs, we can incorporate some of these things that JoJo has brought up after we get a general plan. Okay, I'm smiling.
I see Pete with his hand raised.
Excuse me.
Okay, Pete, where are you?
Can you see me?
There, I see you now. I must have to change my view thingy. Okay, hi.
Hi, thank you. Just for our information, I contacted Finn McCall, who's the chief engineer for boating, and asked about the progress on repairing the breakwater at the North Smallwood Harbor, the original little breakwater, and they're still waiting to get the money. So we're doing this project backwards. We're doing all the landside improvements and paving, and all it's going to take is one big northwest swell to take a lot of that away. Unfortunately, the two projects are not part of an overall project, so they have to be approached from different funding sources, et cetera. So the boating division is proceeding, but they have to get the money for the actual work on the breakwater itself, which is vital. So it's wonderful to see all the improvements and repairs going on, however. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you very much for adding that in, Pete, and thanks for reaching out on that. That's good to know. I mean, you're right. It would be better if we put the cart before the horse, but anyway.
I did talk to Representative David Tarnas the other day, ran into him at the post office, and he's working on the funding, but that's a different avenue, and he's doing that as quickly as possible, and compliments to him for staying on this.
Kevin has his hand raised. Kevin, I promise you have a little hand raised thingy. No, you don't have a little hand raised? Oh, my cursor just looks like that on this. Sorry. I do want to say, and just, and I'm sure you're all aware, but the major infrastructure bill did pass Congress, and that's going to move forward with some substantial money. We want to be sure that we get our fair share of that on the Big Island. So there's money that we haven't seen like that before. Okay, so moving along. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I need to read this as the chair. Public comment on agenda items. Written testimony was accepted via email or in person at Hilo or the Kona Planning Department up to 2 days prior to the meeting. In addition, members of the public were able to register to provide oral testimony on agenda items. That, as the chair, I have the discretion to recognize and limit them to 3 minutes, and we don't have anyone wanting to do that. So we've received no requests for public testimony, and we're going to move on to our first voting item, which is the consideration of the minutes from our meeting of September 13th, 2021. And I would entertain a motion and a second to approve those so we can discuss that. Pete, get first.
Move to accept. I don't see anything in the last
Okay.
minutes that need to be changed.
Okay, so you moved to accept, and I need a second.
Second, Trustee.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Any discussion? Everybody's good with those minutes? Okay, all in favor? Let's raise our hands because of people on a video. Yeah, okay, very good. Motion passes. Moving along.
Sorry,
Oh.
Ruth. Because Karen's camera is off, can we just get a vote from her, please?
Oh yeah, Karen, are you aye or nay on the minutes? Ah, thumbs up. We got it. She's in. All right. Okay, moving along. Under new business, we have you guys received the letter, the only feedback we've received thus far to the planning department, which, where is my little copy of that, from the fire chief, explaining their so everybody's had a chance to we got a letter from the fire chief. He explained the process all the way up to the evacuation, but he can't answer most of the questions that we had, because once that had been done and other people stepped in, they went back to fighting the fire. That's basically what his communication says. So I'm telling you that, and then because planning when I were going back and forth about who was going to talk about this, and we said, Tim will know. So in terms of the after action reports and things, and any follow-up that's happening on all this, Tim, give us the latest, greatest, please.
Okay, thanks. And first of all, appreciate it, Ruth. Thanks to the group for inviting me to have this conversation. Specifically, I know you wanted to talk about and depending how you want to name it, depending where you were, is this the Mauna fire, the Waimea fire, or the Waikoloa fire? I just link them all together because it was truly affecting the whole community. There are ongoing conversations now because there's some things we have learned through all of this. And communication is probably the number one deal. I've talked to the mayor about this. I've talked to the chief about this. I've talked to the military about this. I've talked to civil defense about this. And probably the biggest take-home message is our communication needs to be better. And primarily the communication to the public needs to improve. And so this is definitely recognized. We also have some institutional stutter steps between the departments. So what I mean by that is the communication we had between our fire department and the federal, the U.S. Army, Kohala, all that was phenomenal. That was going really, really, really well. And also a shout out to the Waikoloa community, actually the whole South Kohala community, because we have between Waimea and Waikoloa probably 10,000 people watching the fire. And my Facebook and telephone and all, every time somebody saw a hot spot, I was being contacted, and then we'd send it to the appropriate people. And so it's actually worked out pretty well as far as the communication going that way. The firefighters then could evaluate quickly. Sometimes they dispatched a helicopter, sometimes they had a firefighter in the area so they could verify. And some flare-ups, nothing was done because it was part of a small pu'u that hadn't burned, but everything around it was burned, so there's no reason to put that out. Other times it was, okay, we need to get on that right away. Again, the take-home message there was communication. We had some stutter steps between the county and the state as far as the firefighting, and that was an issue. Also, this was a different type of fire. It went from being a relatively small fire to huge, and not big, but by any standard in the islands, huge. And one of the problems with that was trying to manage it overall, meaning at one point, I think Chief said we had 27 bulldozers out there and 150 plus paid firefighters, plus a whole army of volunteer. They had something like 50 or 60 firefighting units out there. We had 9 helicopters going at one time. It was really all out offensive. And I have to say, it's probably more like a battlefield situation because they're trying to direct things going on. In Saturday afternoon and then Sunday, when the winds were really whipping, literally the fire was going faster than a D9 bulldozer with the blade up wide open could keep up. It was going faster than that. And that's where we lost control of fire, and I'll trace back to the winds. So, and again, after action, talking to fire chief, having all these different people ready to step in and fight fire, but couldn't really step in to fight fire because they have to be registered with the county per se. So there was a lesson there. And what's going to happen is they're going to be doing community outreach to sign people up ahead of time. There are some people that were signed up ahead of time. The big guys that are always fighting fire, like Oye, I think was one of them signed up, and then some of the other construction, Goodfellows, the usual big construction people. So they've done this before. But then they're talking about some of the smaller assets that needed to have that paperwork done because we need to have that done. Also, it was identified that we needed to be able to know where these bulldozers are. It's one thing if you have 3 out there, it's another thing if you have 30, because they have to be working together going in the same direction. And so that was something that the community was working on. And again, trying to reach out to get that done. So then we also identified the needs of the community going forward. And there's some things that we had to deal with. And these were stutter steps. It came down to communications. We got 5 helicopters from the military. But again, the huge effort fell through the cracks as far as having the staff to refuel the helicopters. So we had to get that one sorted out. In Pu'ukapu, we had an issue where DHHL had the water trucks, but not a working tractor dozer or whatever to fix the road to get the water truck out there. And so now the good news is we had these pre-arranged memorandums of understanding so the county could step in and quickly fix the road so we get the water truck out. All of these things are in discussion now, and we're not POW yet with this. We're working on the recovery and glacial coming out on some of that stuff. Long story short, though, the big keys that have been identified are communication and establishing those lines of communication early on and quicker. And I'm going to say having some sort of probably mobile, lack of a better term, war room, where we can take an operations center and put it in like a van that it can be moved to areas, and not just for fire, but if we have another civil defense issue. So have something like that structure. They've talked about it. They have a small thing, but this whole fire initiative put forth really how problematic it was. We need to have some sort of structure that can actually deal with that very, very quickly. We can stand that up very quickly. We're able to deal with taking care of the frontline firefighters well. Again, volunteers stepped in, said, yeah, I'll run the kitchen and do whatever. And that worked out quite well for the community as a overall. But big picture, stepping back, it was identified that the communication, we need to have a far better structure to set that in place. And the county is also looking at some technology using these things. Apparently they have a app or something like that you can download and then put it in your bulldozer or your firefighting truck or whatever. So then the county can see where all this equipment is, put it in the helicopter so you can actually watch what's going on and then direct things. And again, this is all part of the conversation going forward. So there is no final report, but this has all been identified. Police, the evacuation also, the evacuation down through the evacuation road went pretty well. We had police at the intersection down right near the fire station, and that worked okay. We also had police at the intersection at the bottom of Waikoloa Road, so that worked okay. However, what happened was they didn't have it scripted out, so you can only turn right coming out of the Waikoloa emergency road. So we had to stop traffic, go right and left. Okay, that didn't work very well. And same thing at the Waikoloa Junction, the Waikoloa Road Junction had an issue there. And then something we didn't think of, and this was Major Bird, who used to be the captain in Waimea. She's West Side Major now. She identified the problem real quick. We had a problem at the Kaihai Road, Queen Kahumanu Highway, that T intersection. Again, same deal. We didn't think we had to manage that. With all the traffic, we ended up having to manage that. And she jumped on it real quick and we were able to redirect things. All of this stuff has been compiled, still being compiled, and there will be a big powwow setting down and making sure that we have the right communications going to the right people and filling the holes of where we need to. I mean, the whole idea is to have all the planning and never have to use it, right? That's the ideal. But we did identify areas that we needed to. And for instance, water, we've identified areas that we need to have a better source of dip tanks. How do we get those constructed? How do we put more ability to fight quicker into the community? And so that's kind of a nutshell there. If you any questions on any of that stuff, and I'll try and answer them.
Kevin, you sound like Darth Vader.
Let me try the microphone. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
All right. I apologize, Tim. I had to run off for a screaming child in the middle of your talk. So I hope you mentioned.
Been there, done that. Got it.
Was there some discussion about communication out to the public?
Yes. And that was one of the things we identified as we need to do a better job with that. And we need to have a central point of communication so people can tune in. And the bigger concern than poor communication or lack of communication is miscommunication and misinformation. And that was also identified as a issue. My office tried to jump in and handle as much as we could to be sure. And any information my office put out was verified, either with the police chief, with a lieutenant colonel from Pohakaloa, Chief Muller, the firefighter from Pohakaloa. It was verified, Chief Bergen, because I didn't want to put out anything that was even possibly inaccurate. And we identified that as a big issue. So yeah, that is probably the number one thing coming out of the whole conversation.
If I may, is there any sort of action item identified yet related to that for maybe a team to start working on solutions, or is it still in the formative discussion phases?
Formative discussion. The reality is that's something between fire chief, civil defense director, and mayor. Those are the ones, and police chief. It's at that level. Say, okay, how do we put this together? The fire chief has a communication, what I call a public information officer. And personally, I think we get into a situation like this. Civil defense should be the overarching, but they need to tap into the communication officers really quickly. Police don't really have one. And so that structure needs to be set up, because I complained a lot. I received a lot of comments from the community about the communication or lack thereof. And so I have highlighted this for the administration coming forth. The good news is, through all of this, no one got hurt. There was no loss of life. The cost of the fire is huge. An estimate, I know our bulldozer bill is over $1 million. I think, long story short, if we look at the cost total of fighting the fire, it's probably approaching $10 million. And so we've applied for the different grants to help fund that. Then as far as loss of property, we're probably looking at somewhere another $5 to $7 or $8 million. And then we lost 50,000 acres, 47,000. The loss of production of that land going forward, how is that going to be articulated? Best guesstimate, my numbers, based upon the numbers I've received from ranchers, civil defense, the NRCS, all those, trying to gather, and then just using some of my own experience and what is expected. We're probably between $20 and $25 million cost to our community overall. And, on the national scale, is that a big number? Probably not. But on a local scale, that's devastating. And especially going forward, because we have all these open soils. So I've been seeing if we can get something done at the different levels, whether it be through agriculture, through EPA, through whatever the case may be, as far as going forward. The problem is we're not the only one had a fire, and on a national scale, we're pretty tiny. So getting that nod from the federal agencies is really tough right now. That doesn't mean that we're not trying, but we are trying. So I don't know if that answers enough of the questions here, Kevin.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, anything else? We are far from recovered, and we are still working. We did receive some donations for the Pu'ukapu region to help them out, because they lost a bunch of infrastructure. The big costs of the ranch costs are fence lines and pipelines and water storage. And, we're probably in the $3 to $4 million just for that infrastructure. And being able to find the pipes to even put in place, that's a hard thing. And then secondly, having the labor to put them in place. So we're looking at a bunch of different angles to see if we can get something done. And then for me, the bigger picture, that's upfront cost, but then we have the whole economy of what that generates or doesn't generate, and then the jobs that are impacted and all that going forward. And how quick are we going to be able to recover or not? And how will that play into us 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Because I don't expect some of that rangeland to recover for a couple of years, maybe. It's really seasonal growth. And if we were in a drought, and if we don't get some decent rains, we got a little bit of rain early on, it looks like we're going to be okay. The growth out there is really patchy. And so what do we do about that?
Bill, you don't have words of wisdom you want to interject here? Okay. Well, I want to say, again, Tim, the most reliable source of information was your office, which is huge kudos to you. Huge kudos to you for, making sure that you were putting out good information, not misinformation. And I totally applaud what you did. I also will say that's not your job. I mean that it's not your job. As you said earlier, civil defense is lead on this. And civil defense needs to take a good hard look at what they not only were not current on stuff, they were actually putting out some information that was not correct. And that is just, that's like, in my world, that's an easy fix. I mean, really? your lead, you step up, you don't do anything without carefully. And, you know, it's not like it was in the 2005 fire. A lot of things went better, but that was a real similar thing at that time. And I love this thing of there being a bus or a big thing, a coordination center. I'm sure I've shared this with the committee before, but in the 2005 fire, no one from civil defense or the Department of Education or anybody was there. I had civil defense asking me, well, how do you think it looks? And I went, whoa, I'm trained in a ton of things. Fire prediction is not in part of my training. And I was a vice principal at the school. And to me, it was frightening that the decision makers weren't anywhere close to the site. And that's the one that came really close to the village. I mean, we were really lucky on that one. I again commend the mayor for actually, you know, there are people who say, oh, we didn't need to evacuate. Well, personally, I don't want to be sitting in my car burning because it's crossing the road. I want to be going sooner. I do have a question because I know I sent this to you and I sent it to some others. I drafted a survey for people, individuals to fill out. The fire was the first. I think I drafted it on the 3rd of August. I sent it to the Firewise Committee here in Waikoloa. I sent it to you. I got feedback and everything. And then I was told, no, we've got it and it's going out. Then at our last meeting, we were told that a survey was going out. At this point in time, no one remembers August 1st. I'm talking about, I wanted a survey where people could say, yes, this is what happened to me, and that we put that out. As I said in the last meeting, civil defense did have a thing. They have the ability to do a survey because you can go online if you had property damaged and you can go in, you can type. So they have the technology to do it, but that also, we kept saying, let's have a fire drill in Waikoloa. Well, we had a fire drill in Waikoloa and we didn't gather data. We didn't gather data from the individual citizens that lived here. And that's probably lost to us. So I don't know why, because we were told for sure that was coming and now it's not coming at all. Is that right?
I don't know. I can't answer for that because I agree that data would be really important. You know, I did talk to Chief, and Chief and I met on this very shortly after the fire when everything was real fresh. And Chief had a great idea. This is Chief Todd. I said, you know, one of the complaints we had was there are some residents that do not know the escape route at the end of Hulu Street.
Right.
And so Chief said, so what if we do once a year, open that route up and have like a fun day where people can do a fun run or walk it or actually drive down and get to the highway or something? What if we did that once a year so people actually know where it is? I know the signage has been put up, and so we've made steps already as far as that goes. Another thing that Chief said that I really like, we talked about the whole evacuation deal, and I am bothered by the fact that a bunch of people chose not to evacuate. The reason being is because California went through this in this fire season. They had a town that was ordered to evacuate. A bunch of people didn't. So when the firefighters came in to fight the fire, they ended up having to go to rescue, which then prohibited them from fighting fire. They lost the town. And that would happen to Waikoloa Village. If our firefighters had to shift and start rescuing people. So that bothered me. Plus, it's putting our firefighters in harm's way. And the other thing that Chief said on the whole evacuation, and this was definitely an action item he will do. We talked about the evacuation, and I received a bunch of compliments on behalf of the counties saying, you know, we got the word that they were talking about an evacuation. And so I went home and started packing. And I had a bunch of people say, you know, I was very comfortable. We planned and packed and got out to town just fine. And talking to Chief, what the Chief said, what he will do next time, this was a learning moment for him as well. Rather than just issue a evacuation notice, what he thinks he will do next time is say evacuation notice warning. And rather doing the evacuation at noon, do that at 10 a.m. because he had some parameters he was following, if we cross this by this certain timeline and the wind is such and such, I will issue this. So he said, what I should have done was at 10 a.m. said, these parameters are evolving. If they don't change at noon, we'll issue the order and give people a warning. And I think that's a great idea. And then people can start functioning from there. So it's not dropped on them. People are actually aware. And that's something the chief is actually going to put into his protocol, because it's his call as far as the evacuation. It's not mayor, it's not civil defense. It actually comes from the fire chief.
Okay, so Tim, is there anything further? We've already sent a letter as our committee to the mayor asking for this. Is there anything further that we should be doing now besides being patient?
Yeah, I want you to send the same letter to me, and I'll be the squeaky wheel and take it to civil defense chief and mayor and say, you know, we have this data we need to collect. We're fortunate nothing bad happened. But what if something bad happened? Wouldn't it be better if we knew where are the holes in this? And like I said, we know some traffic flows, we know some issues. Great, we know all that stuff. There's been concerns raised about when equipment left Pu'ukapu and focused on Waikoloa Village and all that. And to me, it's very understandable why. But again, gets back to the first thing it said, communication. People need to understand what's going on. And the first dozer that hit the ground went to Pu'ukapu. The first water trucks that hit the ground, Pu'ukapu. The first water drop from helicopter, Pu'ukapu, because that's where the concern was. It's when the fire took off at 60 miles an hour. And we had, they were dealing with Pu'ukapu, but Waikoloa Village of, you know, how many homes do we have there? We only have so many fire assets, and that's when the extra helicopters were called and all that. So they were doing, and even when they were fighting at Pu'ukapu, I can personally say this because I was involved with this. I contacted the military, and they sent a helicopter specifically to a location using Google Map and all that because there was an issue. And so the colonel jumped in on that and got that sent and helped. It wasn't perfect, but we were able to address it. So it's not like things weren't being attended to. People are jumping on as much and as hard as they can, but we can do better.
Okay, so did the full committee hear what our councilman just said? Does anybody want to make a motion? Okay.
See, I'm Bill with hand raised, Ruth.
Say, who has their hand raised?
Bill.
Bill? Don't see it. Okay. Oh, yeah, I do. Bill.
I'd like to say, Tim, that the purpose of the letter that we sent out has more than been answered by what you've talked about at this particular point. So I want to thank you for that, because you gave us some clarity to this. And what you've let us know is that there is all of these different parts working, and you're going to follow up on that. So I really think that it helped us put it into perspective so that we could move on to other topics on that. And you probably will follow up, and I know Ruth will follow up and trying to get some of the information. But I think it was well worth alerting and getting those things going. So thank you very much for the summary you had here. It was very informative.
Appreciate it, and thanks on that. And you know, one other thing I have to compliment the county. For me to get some of this data and observations and all that, I went and looked, and the roads were closed. There was safety issues, but you know, I grew up with half of these guys, and so I rolled down the window, and they just waved me through and allowed me to go almost at wherever I wanted to, which helped me better articulate and clarify for that communication. You know, Ruth, you mentioned kind of the boots on the ground attitude. I went and looked, and boy, there's one place that I was trying. There's a guy, you know, that little greenhouse right at the top of Waikoloa Road, just on the Waimea side. Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to get to that house to help him evacuate. And I was coming from a Waimea side. No way I was going to get through the fire, because the fire was right at the road's edge. It was so thick, and I just couldn't get there. But what I did fully appreciate on that, and then I could report back and give the updates of what's going on and specifically where the fire is. So, you know, quite frankly, it was a shout out to our Department of Transportation, the state DOT, Again, I knew a bunch of those guys and our county public works and all that, because I was able to get where I needed to get so I could better articulate the needs and raise the concerns for chief and colonel and all that sort of stuff. So that was how I was doing it, because I didn't know any different. I went there. All right.
Okay. So not hearing anyone else saying this, I'm going to make a motion that we're going to honor our request from our councilman, and I'm going to take the letter that we drafted and we sent to the mayor. I'm going to adapt it and send it to our councilman to and what I would like to do, I would like to entertain a motion that we approve that revision. I will do it. I will send it out to you in draft, but I do not want to wait months to send this letter. So that's why so it's a motion to take the letter that we sent to Mayor Roth for our last meeting, and we're going to tailor that and send it to Councilman Richards, asking him to take lead on behalf of the South Kohala Community Development Committee's Action Committee in following up.
I second it.
Amen. Okay. Any discussion, Pete?
Excuse me. So move the chair's suggested motion, since the chair doesn't make a motion.
Oh, thank you.
Picayune.
Sorry, but nobody was speaking up. Okay, so you're making the motion that, yeah. Okay.
I second it again.
So Pete's made this motion. Bill has seconded. I'm going to get on this and I will make a modified. We'll make sure through planning, I'll make sure that you have a copy of it, but I want to get it out and get it to our councilman promptly. So hopefully within the next week. And I am selling my house and moving, so I'm a crazy woman. But anyway.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. If we're revising the letter, it will have to go through the same process of getting it to the planning director. So a shortcut to that would be to utilize the same letter, and I could forward it to Tim tonight.
Could you do
Tim,
that? Yeah, and I understand what Kiko is saying. If you did that and then put a quick cover letter, can you do that without having to go through planning director, Kiko? And just say,
Yes.
Thank you for your input. Could you please follow up concerning this letter we sent, blah, blah, blah. Is that okay? Can that go through? So it's just got to cover some sort.
Yeah.
okay. And
I can withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Someone knows
Okay,
Robert.
we're now demoting. We're being demoted. Okay. All right. Good luck to whoever does these minutes. Heather, that's probably going to be your fun job. And hey, Bill, I don't know if you noticed, but Heather Bartlett is back, and then you didn't hear the beginning, or no, it's Pete. Alexis is leaving us. So this is her last meeting, and Heather is coming back to us. So bringing up with that. Okay, so that was a little bit, but it was very important. The only other thing that comes to my mind, and I'm not going to point fingers, but that fire started somehow. And I'm just wondering, when we're talking about, 10 million, up to $25 million dollars, what accountability those that started the fire have about this. And I think they should.
I can't answer the accountability. It's my understanding that this is part of the Kikuyu grass, that they were working on something. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing, but they were kind of the undulating deal. They went over a rise and the fire hadn't started. And it was kind of smoldering and the winds whipped it up. And so, we had a little ember that was maybe smoking a little bit that 99% of the time would have gone out. But because of the winds, that may have fanned the fire, truly fanned the flames. And when they came back, it had gone from no fire to had expanded. And so I get what you're saying on that one, Ruth. And the question is, what's the best management practices of that going forward? And I can't answer that well. Ideally, of course, we all have fire extinguishers, what we do. But if you don't know a fire is not burning, and this was a problem at Pu'ukapu. Kikuyu grass is horrible when it comes to fire, meaning the fire will burn down through the roots and lie dormant. It's really smoldering for upwards of 10 days, 2 weeks. And that's what kept happening at Pu'ukapu. They thought they were out, and then things caught fire again. And they thought they were out and things caught fire. And that was one of the things that we helped get equipment in there, because they had these big rolls or piles of the Kikuyu mat that they had peeled up. The fire had gotten into them. They thought they'd put them out. And then they needed heavy equipment to come in and knock them all down, and then water trucks to come in and soak them. And so it was real interesting, all the challenges. You know, you talk about the after action report, a lot of things that we learned. We got them a pump for Pu'ukapu, going through the Sayre Foundation. We had got enough money donated to get hookup pipes and pumps to suck the water out of the water tank there, because they had water, but they had no way to get the water from the tank into the pump trucks. So Sue Leloy, Councilwoman Sue Leloy, and I were able to facilitate that real quick. So I hear you as far as being responsible, and that one is under investigation. Quite frankly, no one really wants to talk about what the investigation is going to bring for whatever reason. And what I've gathered is kind of superficial. I have seen no confirmation report of the sequence of events, but that's how that was related to me.
Well, I'm just saying Coconut Wireless is that they were welding in the wind and a spark that they didn't have a fire extinguisher. And I don't know. I have no idea. And actually, we've spent a lot of time on this, but I'm just saying this was a terrible thing for the community and for the economy. And no one should be going out ever on anything like that completely not prepared. I mean, I don't know how we credential that. I don't know how we make people do that, but it's just crazy that we had this loss.
And I will speak, I'm pretty sure I know who it was. And I do know the quality of work that those people do is exceedingly high. And so I know this is not a cavalier thing. So I don't think there was cavalier attitude or anything like that, because I do know when we talk about it, I mean, I've been working on building a corral, and we have water around all the time. We set up sprinklers before we do any welding the day before. So I know industries look at this very carefully, but again, this is that after action report. What are the best management practices and how do we bring that forward? And I think the wildfire, the rangeland, the whole wildfire deal, I think we have to tap into that. I was at a meeting in Salt Lake City a couple of weeks ago, and we specifically talked about this fire and how it's impacted in the whole rangeland wildfire scenario and what we do about that going forward. Because we, meaning Hawaii County, was one of the topics, because it affected our community. And again, relative to wildfire, Western United States, small, but to our community, huge. And so that's why we talked about that.
Okay, very good. I'd like to close out this discussion and move on to implementation of updates from the Action Committee. I'm going to jump around just a little bit here. Both Mark and Julia are not here. I will let you know that Waikoloa Village Association, this is mentioned on our agenda, does have a Firewise Committee. Julia was the chair of that. She's no longer the chair. I don't know the details of that. I totally spaced going to the board meeting on the night that happened. But I know that Mark is serving as the interim chair for that subcommittee, or the committee of the Village Association. And they're looking for new leadership. So we've gone through that. So I'm gonna skip past the part where it talks about this. I do, and Pete, if you and Bill don't mind, I'm gonna flip to Karen first, because she's been doing a lot of work on the Pu'uko water treatment and sanitation issue. And Karen, we would really love to hear from you about that.
Ruth, I'm gonna have to step off. if there's any other questions for me, if I might have to step off, I have to get on to another thing. All right.
Thank everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Really,
you. so
really,
much. Good to see everybody.
yeah, good to see you too.
Thank you,
Thank you
Tim.
so much.
Okay.
Okay.
Aloha, everyone. All right.
Aloha.
Thank you.
So Miss Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm here. My internet is really bad, so I'm going to mute, turn off my video, and that helps. Okay.
Sure.
So we've been working on the Puako wastewater system. The state gave the county $1.5 million in funds, and the county matched, and the funds were encumbered by the county, in the middle of the year, and nothing has been done with them. The head of wastewater, Ramsey, has been talking to people, the Mauna Lani, but at this point, and I just had a meeting with Coral, who's the nonprofit organization who's really helping this. They don't know any update, and the funds have to be spent by the middle of next year, if not maybe March. And if they're not, then they go back into the state coffers. So at this point, we're really, the whole community is saying what's happening. And we don't know, and no one's really doing a lot of communicating about it. And the PCA just met, the Puako Community Association just met, and this was one of our action items, is to find out about it. So if anyone has any updates, we would love to hear it, because it would be a real shame to lose what is essentially now $1.75 million with the county match to go toward providing wastewater system on Hawaii Island.
Okay, I'm sorry, Karen. I thought you said that the state gave us 1.5 million and that the county matched that. So
They had to match, they only had to match they only had to match a small percentage of it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So,
right.
Let me just clarify. Who would say, so we've got that much money encumbered, it's sitting there, it's going to lapse if it doesn't get spent. Who gives the green light to go ahead on this?
Ramsey and the mayor. And at
Who
this point,
is Ramsey?
He's the head of wastewater management at the county. And basically, so for the past 6 years, the community of Puako has worked with all different people at the county and in planning and engineering firms and all of that, and have gone through, should we do private cesspools? Should we create our own? Should we connect to Mauna Lani? And in the end, it was determined that the best solution is for us to build one of our own little mini plants, like they have right above Costco in that small community. And that's what we got the $1.5 million encumbered to do, so that we could finish, the county could finish the studies, and then we could move on to implementation. The county needs to put out an RFP to do that work, and it hasn't done that yet. In the meantime, the mayor and Ramsey have said, well, wait a minute, why not connect to Mauna Lani? And Mauna Lani has said 3 times to us in the past 6 years, you cannot connect to us. We don't have enough capacity. Plus, they don't produce high enough quality water in their wastewater treatment plant. So that's where we're at, and any help we can get to move this process along would be really appreciated.
Okay, I know I'm talking too much, but I am going to tell you, Kohala Village has always, I used to live in Kohala Village. I was actually president of that village association. We had our own sewage treatment plant. And that's from a long time ago, okay?
Oh, I know. We know.
yeah.
We know.
So, considering the size of Pulico, I mean, I don't understand. Okay, so does anyone on the committee have any ideas or any motions to make?
Well,
on
let me also just say that the county's challenge is that they really do not want to be responsible for running another treatment plant because there's all sorts of issues with that. So it just needs to be put forward. We just need to keep the process moving. Again, our community itself, we have already put in $2.5 million of private funding ourselves for this. So it's really just keeping the process moving, and the states has been involved.
Okay, so back to my knowledge of the Kohala Village Association. That was under the purview of the Village Association. What I'm saying is we ran it. The county didn't have anything to do with it. We had, so why does this suddenly become the county's bailiwick?
It doesn't, Ruth. That was the proposal that the community put forward. But again, it would require building a plant. It would require running pipes and all of the infrastructure on county roads and property. And it would require having a private entity running the sewage plant. And at some point, the last administration said, you know what, it's best if the county does this. So then when the new administration took over, they said, wait a minute, maybe that's not such a good idea. So those are the investigations that have been going on. And in the meantime, the time limit to utilize the money is running out. Now, I'm sure we could probably, well, I'm not sure. I'm hoping that we could apply for an extension for the money, the use of the money.
How can the action committee help you guys in Pulico?
Let me jump in here for a
It
minute.
would be good. Yes, please.
Bill.
Karen, has there been, what's the source of the water down there? Drinking water? Is it county?
It's well, it's just groundwater. We're
No,
not
but
on any
but
water.
Yeah, but it's county run, isn't it? The utility, the water?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
Department of Water Supply.
yeah, okay.
yeah,
Now,
yes.
has anybody had a conversation at all with Cal Water and Waikoloa? Because they do sewage systems too, and they're basically buying out and taking over several things in the state. Maybe there's a public-private connection that can be done here with a cooperation of the county. Has anybody talked to Cal Water?
Good question, Bill. We've talked to several different private companies. And again, we thought that was the direction we were going to go. And then the county all of a sudden said, wait a minute, we think we should do this. Because remember, it's not just Pulico, it's Pulico, Wailea Bay, the two state parks, the Pulico boat ramp, the University of Hawaii has land there as well. So there's a lot of different entities involved, and the county said, well, maybe we should do this. So what we need right now, Bill, is for the county to make a decision of whether they're going to do it or not.
Well,
So that someone
My,
can move it forward.
my gut is that that was a previous county administration that gave the green light. And this county administration is saying, wait a minute, I'm not sure we want to go in that direction. So bottom line is you might need another alternative to cooperate with the county so that the county would make the decision to get involved on something that wasn't going to have to be totally under their control. And I mean, it just looks to me that the reason why it's not happening is because it really isn't going to happen. So you got to come up with another. You got to come up with another way of goosing them to get it done, and it might be trying to get a consortium together on it, because if you got the state involved and you got all the other people that are involved in this situation, and you're dangling out some money that's sitting here, and all it is who's going to administer the money, and get cooperation. You might want to at least talk to Cal Water, because they're based in Waikolo Village, so they might see some benefit to them. Anyway, that's just a suggestion.
Bill, do you have
That's a great
contact?
suggestion. I've written that down.
Okay, do you have contact information you could send to Karen on that with Cal Water?
Yeah, I can get the names of the managers that's there, and he'd be the one to talk to, and I can get that to you probably in a day or so.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Bill. I'd really appreciate it. That'd be great.
Okay, at least it's worth a conversation.
Well,
Yeah.
we just got to remember that this problem that we're facing actually in some way, I mean, it's everywhere, and not just everywhere in Hawaii. It's an everywhere problem. And, you know, I think our hope has been that Pu'uko might be a model. And so I realize that this has taken a huge amount of work, Karen, and appreciate you guys staying with it. But right now, if we're stuck, then maybe there needs to be another way to go forward. Okay.
I really appreciate that. And I will take any suggestions that anyone has to offer. Because again, the reason that the state gave Pu'uko the money, because not only is it one of the most fragile reefs in the state, but also because the community has put in so much money and it's so active. And the state was really hoping to see if this could be a model for how all of the other communities in the state could handle their septic problems, because the EPA limit on Hawaii's septic systems is coming up very quickly, 2030.
Yeah. And in the meanwhile, we're jeopardizing our reef. So, okay. Very important. Thank you again. So Bill, do you or Pete have anything you want to update with us on the on historic preservation, or anything new to share?
Nothing new from my side.
Okay, well, I think what it is that because the state is negotiating with the county on taking over the road through the middle of town, that's, if that becomes a reality, the one thing that I think is missing, and that we are probably going to chase from a community group, is right now when it's county, we have a medial strip through the middle of town, and it was come on, you know, I'm 2 hours ahead of you, so my brain is over there.
Outdoor circle.
Outdoor circle, and the other thing is that we have the ability through several committees to talk to the county whenever there's something that's happening within that those county roads. You know, potholes, traffic, and all that. When it gets turned over to the state, we have no idea how we're going to interact with the state. We don't think the state's going to, you know, understand that they've got a highway through the middle of a town, and the town has particulars that they're interested in, you know, and the state's looking at it as as a connection link. So traffic safety, that kind of stuff. I think what we need to do is to push so that not if, but when it happens, that it gets turned over to the state, that we have some kind of vehicle and connection through whatever department of transportation or whatever, so that it's a sounding board, just like we had when it was a county road. And so maybe we should pursue that aspect of making sure that we bring it to their attention, that it's coming through the middle of a town. It's not like on the side of the town or whatever. And we should get some kind of a vehicle like the traffic safety amped up and written into the transaction when they transfer it from the county.
So Pete,
I have to compliment County Public Works. The puka men were out and filled the pukas in the road, Mamalahoa Highway between Mud Lane and Lanao Road. It was getting pretty bad. So we're temporarily okay.
okay, so our state representatives, Senator and Inouye and David Tarnas, are they aware of the concerns you have, Bill?
They were voiced when we met with David Tarnas, but I don't think I think it has to be a specific situation. I mean, the way the county has operated with the town right now is probably through traffic safety. The state does attend the traffic safety, but it's just a committee. And so that probably needs to be beefed up, and they have to have some input on the fact of, who do we talk to and what kind of a reaction time are we going to have when such things are needed there. But the important thing is the vehicle of being able to interact with the state like we did with the county.
Okay, I don't know how many state roads run through communities. So is this an unusual thing?
I think I think for the size of our town, it's unusual, and our town is different. We participate, we take action on it, and the county has always supported the traffic safety process. This has been a major interaction, and it brings up all sorts of things. The question is, that once it goes to the state, how does that act, and is the state going to react the way the county did? You're taking away some home rule. So all I'm saying is that we should be in there before they have the agreement, so that they actually have some language in there that there is, how do we handle this? Who do we call? Honolulu? Who do we call when there's something like this? How do we vet these things? How do we make them aware of some kind of situation that's happening? A lot easier when it's on the county level. So I see it as being proactive rather than waiting for the unintended consequences.
Okay, so is there something the action committee can do to support your concerns and that the communications stay good? You said for sure this is going to happen. The state's going to take it over.
Oh yeah, it's not if, it's when.
Okay, all right.
And rightly so, because the state says we want to have control over anything that's a state highway, even if it goes through the middle of town. And so
Right.
they're trading roads. I mean, like the big one is the state highway that goes out to nowhere at down in Honokaa to the end of the road there is now going to be a county road.
Kukui Highway?
Yeah. That's all a state highway from Honokaa to Waipio. And so that will then become a county road. And there's other trades that they're making, and it's already in progress. And what has been said indirectly is that it's a done deal. Well, the question is, none of us know what the done deal is. So maybe the way we can, you could, through this entity, could happen is, could you give us the status, and could you let us know what the plan is affecting South Kohala?
Okay, do you want to put that? What do you see us doing? writing someone, communicating with someone?
Yeah, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about it. Pete, you got any ideas on something we can do just to start this conversation? Uh-oh,
Oh,
where'd
he's
Pete,
here.
where'd Pete go?
Maybe just a couple paragraphs requesting maybe the status of the project, and then when it's completed, which we're all assuming will happen, what is our avenue for communication and liaison with the new owners?
Good, I
Okay,
second what you said.
Okay, but what I want to know is, does that, so that's something that we would send a letter like we had also done on the fire? We would send a letter from the action committee? I'm asking.
Yes, that would go to, I can't remember his name, the state representative currently from traffic, from state highways.
Yeah,
and with
I
a
think
copy, to the public works director county.
It probably should go to the county first and then a copy to the state,
Yeah.
or addressed
Could I
to
make
both of them.
Yeah. Could I make a suggestion that our planning team tries to reach out first to county and then to state and see what information we can pull for you folks?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Then
that'd be
just
good.
keep us informed. We don't have to take action until we hear from you.
Can somebody restate that? Keiko, what were you proposing?
I'm offering for us to try and reach out, for our division to try and reach out to DPW and then to the state to see what information we can find out. And then if we're able to get the information, we'll just pass it along. And if for some reason there's a speed bump, then we'll revisit it and see what we can do next.
Well, just a reminder that we won't be revisiting anything until February the 14th, Valentine's Day of 2022.
Well, I think that, it's time sensitive, so we need to, ask a question. This is the quickest way for us to get it on their radar that somebody's asking this information to be formally given.
Okay,
So Natasha Soriano from our long range division, it works very closely with both the state and with DPW. And so I'm hoping that relationship will then help us get the information fairly quickly.
Okay. Well,
okay,
I think the most important thing about this is that it gives us the ability to inform the community, which is who we represent, that this is going to happen ahead of time instead of just when it gets announced. So it would be timely to get some more information right away, and a timeline as well.
okay.
So
So
if
Keiko, you're going to draft an email, or am I following this? You're going to draft an email asking questions on the part of planning. Is that right?
I think we're
What
being
I'm-
asked
I'm
to
gonna-
agree that Keiko is going to take action because
Right.
there is a representative dealing with both the state and the county, and just to inform us. And then if we have to do something, then we can just wait till our next meeting, I guess. If that's an action item, Keiko, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And so maybe if it sounds reasonable, we can reach out to Bill and Pete just to make sure that we're getting all of the information and all of the questions correct before we engage.
Okay, that's exactly where I was going, was that if you would
Okay.
draw up a draft and you would run it by both of those guys, and then go ahead and get that out as soon as is feasible, so that we can get the ball rolling. Was that going to be good, Pete? You got a thumbs up? Bill, you got W?
Sounds good. Done.
Okay, all right, next. Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a current action committee members' terms. And wait, we didn't get paper on that, did we? Where did we talk about the schedule? I'm sorry, I'm looking at my detailed notes. Anyway, we have a schedule for do we have to, do we have to do any action on this schedule other than say thank you for giving us the dates? Okay. Thank you for giving us the dates. So let's go back. We didn't get anything on that. So I had asked planning to please give us an understanding. I get really confused about people's terms and stuff. Turns out there's only, I think, wait, Karen and Pete are the only people sitting here whose terms aren't already expired. I didn't even know mine was expired, and I found out in the meeting. Tristy said, "No, you're expired." And I went, "Oh, well, thanks a lot." Not that expired. So Bill and Kevin and Tristy and I came in together, and we are past our terms. We're what's called holdovers. And so are Julia and Mark, and Pete and Karen are the only people who are actively serving a term. And when I had this conversation with planning, I said, and there was like, oh, well, no, because that person stepped into someone else's 4-year term. I said, this needs to be cleaned up. This is goofy. I mean, it's just goofy. And I know that it's not like people are beating down the door to serve on these committees and that there are vacancies in places, but maybe part of this, a 4-year term is kind of long. I don't know, but I really at least would like us to know what we're doing and that we're always clear when someone is somehow, unbeknownst to me, and I was sitting there the whole time. If Julia and Mark went through a process by which they renewed their membership, it was never brought to committee. So so a couple of things. One's transparency, and the other is a sensible system for keeping the engine going. So,
Thanks, Ruth.
no, but so do we have that? Am I right by what I'm saying that about all the, I don't have that right in front of me. I thought we were going to look at that.
Yeah. Heather is going to share her screen that kind of outlines everyone's terms. And this conversation is not just happening with South Kohala because everybody is curious. And I think what we were hoping would happen, and we don't need anyone to answer right now during the meeting, but we know that people have been holding over for years and they may be tired and exhausted, but feeling an obligation to stay on so that we can continue to have quorum. We haven't pushed real hard to recruit for South Kohala because you folks have been working so hard. And I think given the year of COVID, we kind of wanted to get back into the rhythm of it. But we certainly don't want folks to feel like they're trapped. And so I'm hoping that this will just be an honest place where we can have conversation about whether folks are interested in continuing to stay on or not. It'll tell us kind of how hard we need to push to recruit folks. I do know that we kind of have one member from community that the mayor's office is hoping to put before council at the start of the new year for the vacant seat that Diane stepped out of. But other than that, yeah, we're just hoping for kind of an honest conversation about where folks are at, what they're hoping for, and kind of thinking outside of the box on how we can be creative going into 2022, given that we'll probably still be doing Zoom, but there's some changes coming with Sunshine Law, and we're going to get, internally we'll have more training on that and what that means for us at the start of the new year, and we'll share that out with you folks. But as Heather's sharing her screen, she can kind of just go through and give you folks kind of a, I know this looks like a pretty colorful table, but she can give you kind of the breakdown of what it's saying.
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question. The mayor proposes and the council yays or nays on it. Is that correct? But does it ever come
Correct.
from the councilman first? and putting it out there and the mayor concurring?
It can, in a way that a council member could certainly encourage someone to apply in the same way that you folks could or we could.
Okay, good.
So definitely we try to include our council members in that recruitment. Yeah.
Okay, so
process.
I would suggest that internally, Ruth, what we do is make this list available to Tim and ask him if, because I think he would like to see a continuation of our meetings and a continuation of a board that can meet a quorum, and get his suggestion on that, as well as find out from the individuals whether they're willing to continue to serve. That way we at some point in time they're going to have to solidify it, but you're just trying to avoid this going to the council until the mayor's ready to go to the council, I guess.
Well, no. For any new action committee member terms, it would go from the mayor to the council to officially serve on the action committee.
Well, good. Then Tim could set up the committee for us. I'm just kidding. All right.
Very
Anyway,
funny.
just to say, let's make him aware of it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Heather.
All right, so speaking of transparency, here is us being totally transparent. You can see that each member is seated, and hopefully I can articulate this correctly. Each person fills a seat. That seat started on staggered terms when the CDP was adopted. So we can go back all the way in time to the month and year that the CDP was adopted. We had folks that signed up for 2-year terms, folks that signed up for 3-year terms, and folks that signed up for 4-year terms at the get-go. And these seat terms continue throughout. And you can see the alternating colors here are these seats. So if I skip ahead a bit more, and hopefully you guys can see this okay, it's big enough. You can kind of see, like, you can find your own name and find where you fill the seat and where that officially sits. And so it is kind of funky in the way that it's laid out, and that you don't from the get-go automatically serve a 4-year term. So you mentioned earlier, Julia and Mark, when they got signed on to the committee, they served a term that was less than a year. And per the charter, you can renew that. You can reapply to go into a full term. And so this is just the way that this is organized out. And you can see everybody is basically a holdover. Even when you look at Pete, and Karen, they're going to be expiring in February of 2021. So it won't be 2022, excuse me. So we're going to have an action committee here soon that is mostly all holdovers. And Keiko was saying earlier about having an open and honest conversation. It doesn't have to necessarily happen here now. What actually we would like to do is have individual conversations and just really check in with everybody. We really value your time and the commitment that you've made to the committee, and we just don't want to see anybody getting burnt out or working on the committee because they feel obliged to. So we just want to be fair to everybody. This is the reality. This is the behind the scenes work that we do that maybe may not always be easy to articulate without some kind of visual. So hopefully this helps.
Can I ask a question? This is Karen.
Yes.
So how do these positions normally get filled? So like everyone that's currently a holdover, can we just ask them to become official again, or how does that happen? I mean, because this is a really strange 2 years. I mean, we have COVID and all of that. So what's an efficient process to make everyone official for at least another short term until the world gets back to more normal working order?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the charter doesn't really spell out conditions as far as encountering things like COVID, where we don't meet for a year. So holdovers, unlike other boards and commissions, like Board of Appeals, they're limited to a certain amount of months that they are allowed to hold over. That doesn't hold the same for action committee members, which is why we have folks holding over for years. But once you step off of the action committee, then you have to wait 2 years before you can reapply to sit on it again. And that's in alignment with the other boards and commissions.
Heather,
So
would you,
basically, Karen,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say, we're not saying you're going to get kicked off the committee
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
February 2022. We're saying you're
No
going to become a
worries.
holdover at that point. And at that point too, we want to work with you to understand, do you want us to push for new applicants? You know, are you okay with holding over? And that's just the honest conversation we want to have with everybody.
Let me ask the question here. What does the planning director envision for the committees anyway? Because I would imagine that he would have input on this. And if I remember correctly, most of the time it's your department that tries to figure out how to make sure you can get a quorum. So you're always, advocating and trying to get people to step forward. I mean, I hadn't thought about it until Roger Harris and my classmate said to me, "Hey, you need to go into that committee." So, they asked me to take a look at it. So, let's be proactive on all this. Let's find out who would like to continue. And, like you said, one-on-one, and then, council, Tim would have to be involved in, appreciating it, because he's jumping in. This is the first time I've seen council people jump in and participate. So I'm very happy that this is happening this way. So let's just solidify it.
I agree. Well, actually, Margaret Willie was active, definitely was active with this. But Heather, can I ask you a favor? Will you scroll back to when it started? Actually, we passed the CDP in 2008, but apparently we didn't form the action committee until 2010. But if you guys look at that and you look in the yellow, you'll see that at the beginning, we had people who were serving for a 2-year term, a 3-year term, and a 4-year term. Okay, and that was so there'd be a staggering. I don't know that we might not want to. But that's not something that was in the CDP as an action part. That came from somewhere, and I'd like to think of that as a little more, I hope that that's flexible, because I know that, well, Kevin had his name in for, Kevin, you had your name in for quite a while to serve on the action committee before any action was taken on that. And then you came in with Tristy and Bill and I. But apparently your proactivity was recognized because you got a longer, you filled in for a longer term. But anyway, I talked to him and he said, well, I didn't know that when I was bringing on Bill on board that meant I was going off. Roger would have been perfectly happy to continue. No, I'm serious. He told me that. He said, I've been perfectly, I thought I was going to.
It's been 2 years, so tell him to get back on board again.
Well, I know, I literally, I will, but there's something that's just goofy about this. And I don't know, it makes it, I'm serious. And Tristy was now, and I got to tell you, the reason that I thought when Heather, remember that book you guys put together when you did an orientation for Bill and Tristy and Pete, not Pete, and Kevin and I, I complimented you and it had a list. Remember, Tristy, you pulled this up and showed it to me. It showed expiration dates and they don't jive with what's here. So at any rate,
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'm familiar with enough to know that this is messy. And
So
you could,
yeah, I was just gonna say what I can share is that this staggering of seats and the terms are set out in code. So we can't change that officially until we change the code.
Okay.
And so if we're looking at that line with Roger and Bill on it, that's a good example of, sorry, Heather, can you scroll back just a little bit? It's a good example of Roger came on board and he served his full, nope, he didn't. Okay. So at the start of it, someone started the seat and then didn't, resigned or for whatever reason left the action committee. And then Lori Lay came on and she stayed till the end of that term, but then that seat stayed empty until Roger came in to complete the rest of that 4-year term. And then Roger volunteered to be a holdover for another 2 years. And then when Bill was brought on, he was finishing that last 2 years of that term. And so a lot of times that happens because we definitely are trying to keep quorum so that we can keep meeting and keep working together.
okay.
And unfortunately, it's just not, it doesn't always jive depending on, you know, where folks are at, what their schedules look like. Sometimes a commitment is made and then for whatever reason, you know, a person can't keep it. And so I think that's part of the conversation when we reach out to you folks individually is just to make sure to see where you stand, whether you're interested in continuing to hold over or you're like, I'm so tired, I would rather just engage with the county as a community member and not necessarily as an action committee member, if that makes sense.
Is everybody clear on that? So planning's going to reach out and talk to us individually about where we are in this. I can tell you that after working on this since 2006, when we first started gathering data, and then being on the committee that wrote this plan up to now, when I sell my house, I'm not leaving the Big Island, but I also don't know where I am, and I'm going to be fairly mobile in terms of traveling and for a little bit. And I don't think my thing is I don't think I'm going to be able to well serve this if I'm not around a little bit more. So I will be I will be stepping down. I might make it through your February 14th meeting, but I otherwise I will be stepping down just because I'm finally starting the third act of my life. Okay. Anyway, so I don't know where other people are. I hope that people will be there. And I know that I will. I just want to honor everybody. It takes a tremendous amount of grit to keep skinning this game as slowly as it moves. So I really respect all of you and honor the time that you spend on this, because every now and then we get something that works. It's really nice. I love it when it works. So, but it just takes, this committee and this process is not for sissies. Okay, so that's that. Guys, so you guys will be contacting us. I'm going to move on, and if there's no objection to the agenda for next time. Just a continuation on some of the things we've had here in terms of reports from our different areas, certainly in terms of what's going on in Puako, what's going on with fire, what's going on with historic preservation, what's going on with the roads. I think we can roll those items over because they're going to continue to be important. And then anything else that you want to send to planning, we'll do that. Just a note, the next meeting that is on the schedule is January 19th of 2022, and that's going to be all of the action committees together And then our action committee will meet again on February 14th. Okay, any comments or questions on that? Keiko?
Sorry, just one other thing I wanted to throw out as we're talking about being creative in our approach to getting work done next year. So one of the things that that's possible is the action committee would like to meet more regularly. Corp Council has told us that as long as we stay in compliance with Sunshine Law, that the action committee members can organize themselves to meet in between the quarterly meetings that we're supporting. So an example of that would be if we have the all AC meeting in January and then we have Heather and I help to support a meeting in February, then if you folks wanted to meet in March, you could do that. The caveat would be that you guys would need to draft the agenda and provide minutes to us. And certainly we would do our part by posting the agenda, posting the minutes, and helping to support the drafting of those if you needed it. So anyway, just something for you guys to think about. We don't need you to like commit to it full on and say you're gonna meet every month. Just an idea we wanted to throw out that some action committee members might be interested in. I don't know if you guys have additional questions or thoughts around that, but.
Thank you, Keiko. I forgot that you had talked to me about, and you know, my thing on this is that, you know, we just don't, it's hard to get traction when you're meeting as infrequently as we are. I mean, that's just, I mean, I love that Karen and, you know, and the different people are doing different things, but in terms of cohesive and like, I think I shared with you guys when we wrote the CDP, we met monthly, and then there are times toward the end we met weekly, and that's the only way. We were the very last CDP that got to Mayor Kim's desk in 2008, and we were formed the last. We had to push hard to be able to get that, and we did. And I'm not saying that we need to be that intense right now, but when we look again at whenever we get the template on redoing the CDP or updating it or refurbishing it, this schedule is just too little. So I think what it's going to be is that it would be that the action committee would take more initiative on the meetings that we choose to have without planning, organizing it. And that's kind of how, so anyway.
I got a quick question.
Okay.
Do we have any existing budget items that actually have some money on them that we should continue to support, and basically kind of take a look at the goals and anything that we should make sure that we keep in front of the county, or have all of those passed last year?
You talking about CIP, Bill?
Yeah, CIP.
Okay, Heather and I can check into that.
Okay, because that kind of gave us the push before COVID to renew it, because there was still some money on the table from Margaret Willey days, and keep it in front of the county so that it was, you know, it was already there. I think we've run out of that, but I think there was something down in Poolco too. Anyway, let's check on that and check on some of the goals we had for the different venues, and see if we can't pull ourselves together on that.
Okay.
I have a quick, Ms. Karen, I have a quick question or request again. Did any projects on the South Kohala planning actually get onto the federal list of infrastructure projects for the infrastructure money?
We can look into that for you, Karen.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
and-
don't have an answer.
Thank you.
And Karen, I'm not sure that because that has just come down and there's a filtering process, I'm not sure that we know the answer to that just yet because it's quite literally hot off the press. But I mean, what I've been advocating for is that we be sure that we're, you know, that they remember us out in the hinterlands when $2.8 billion comes into the state.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot because Kevin actually has an idea that he's quickly going to share. That's a really good idea. It might need some money, but it might be something very positive action committees could do that coordinates with not killing the goose that laid the golden egg in Hawaii, which is tourism. And I didn't tell him I was going to ask him this, but he's always ready.
Wasn't sure which idea you were leading towards there.
You have so many good ones.
So one thing that I thought would be useful for action committees to discuss is, sorry, I know I'm not the loudest person in the world, so please bear with me. We have a lot of tourism on our island, and although in some cases it's not favored, it is the thing that seems to provides a lot of jobs and a lot of income and really helps our island keep going. So in a situation like that, I always think it's best to get ahead of what's happening. And so the idea I had was that as action committees, we could work with our communities to choose which tourist attractions in our districts we would like to highlight and drive tourists to use. And then once we have identified the tourist attractions that we want to encourage tourists to use, then we can target those specific sites for some kind of associated development that would help tourists use those locations in the best way that we envision. So eliminating or minimizing any environmental damage, or providing educational information about historical information or other kinds of interesting community information. And so each action committee could then come up with whatever number it is. It's a dozen sites, 50 sites, depending on which district you might be in. And then, as you know, as soon as we come up with those lists and we say, okay, these are the highlighted tourist destinations on the Big Island of Hawaii, it'll go into every guidebook, it'll go into every magazine, it'll go into flyers and printed placemats and all the things that these things go into. And that's where everybody will go. And so then, since we know the tourists are going to go to those places, the development that we can do can also be defensive. We can add parking, we can add waste, trash barrels, right? We can add fences, right? We can control in some regard the tourism use of those locations. And I thought that this was something that sounded like a good fit for action committees because it's forward thinking, it's community specific. I thought this would be something that would be interesting. And I did hear last year or the year before sometime that there was a group that had been put together that was working on some tourism focus, and it sounded like it was led by somebody in planning. And I wasn't able at the time to raise my hand and say I'd like to be involved in that, but looking forward into next year, I think this is something that an idea I had that I thought would be interesting.
Awesome. Kevin, I would love to connect you with Frisha Ceballos. She is the tourism and cultural specialist, and she works out of the Department of Research and Development. But we work very closely with her. And so they do have, there are multiple groups that are put together, but I'd love to connect you with her because they have some work, but she's definitely looking to bring more community on board. So anyway, it would be wonderful if you guys could connect, and then we'll see what we bring back to the action committee. That'd be great.
Okay, so Kevin, since I put you there, let me see if I can get you a little bit off the hot seat here. So maybe, Keiko, it would be, I don't know what but, and I don't mean a long presentation because nobody does well with long, but it might be something we would want to invite her to share with our action committee about, maybe even something for the 14th of February. It's a possibility. Anyway, keep that on the back burner. I would entertain, unless anyone has anything else to say. I have no one else to put on the hot seat. Let me see. Yeah, everybody's had a turn. Oh, Heather. Oh, wait. Yes. Heather?
Put me on the hot seat. Okay, I wanted to share that I feel really, really chipper coming back, and I'm really excited, and that I just kind of wanted to circle back a little bit to the conversation we were just having, the last agenda item about like rethinking how we can move forward with the action committee next year. And Keiko and I have been really thinking about this a lot, and we put our heads together, and we're really trying to think over the question, given the resources that we have, how can we support you in the best way? How can we move forward in the best way? And so I hope to just kind of leave the meeting with that in mind, and that I'm looking forward to talking to you folks individually and specifically about this too. And yeah, just keep that in mind. When we go into next year, we're open to ideas and thoughts and suggestions. And the idea of you guys running your own monthly meetings is a way of us being able to say, look, we're limited in our capacity. We might not be able to accomplish all the wonderful things that we'd like to accomplish for you guys. And we also want to give you the space to do that too. So just have that in mind leaving the meeting, and looking forward to, I hope, continuing this conversation in another meeting. So
Very good.
all I wanted to say.
And one last mahalo to Alexis. We don't expect you to disappear. We're very happy about what you're doing, and hope that we can continue to work together to do good for our community. And we're just thrilled for your opportunity, and all the best.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to just being a community member now and working alongside you folks.
I told her she could run for an action committee space. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Pete, second. Christy.
Thank you.
So actually I have to look on so at 7:03, we're 3 minutes over. 7:03, we're officially adjourning the meeting. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful holiday season. Be safe out there. And God bless. And send your rich friends to look at my house.
Thanks, everybody.